This is the all-new Hardy Marksman Z, and it's the best saltwater rod Hardy has ever made. And today, I'm here to review it. If you've been following our channel for a while, you'll know that we're big fans of the Hardy brand. They've made some absolutely stellar rods in the past, from the Zenith all the way to the Zane Pro. And this Marksman Z is no exception. But in fact, this one is even better than the Zane Pro. And while the Zane Pro has all of those Tarpon tournament wins under its belt, this one's sure to get those accolades as well. What I really love about this rod, though, is the action. And while the Zane Pro, at least in the 8-weight, to me, felt like it was more of a copy or an evolution of some of the previous rods, this rod here is totally different. And it's a much faster and, in my opinion, much more purpose-built saltwater rod. But we'll get back to how it casts after we show you some of the components and some of the brand new design features on this all-new Marksman Z. Starting from the bottom, they've upped the size of the fighting butt. And that's actually something that we did on our Atlas as well. If you're going to make a fighting butt, it should be big enough that it actually does something. And this one does. Then that rolls into Hardy's quote-unquote keyed reel seat. It's really an asymmetrical reel seat, so that ring doesn't slip around. Of course, it's double up blocking and has a cool 8 engraved here, just in case you forget which rod you're casting. The rings also have a fairly unique shape. They're absolutely functional, but in my opinion, a little bit too much design has gone into it. Then of course, we've got a standard full Wells grip. And just like the Marksman, I felt like this grip was a little bit thicker than some of the others. Overall, I kind of prefer a slightly thinner grip, especially towards the base. As we move up the rod, you'll notice Hardy's standard clear finish over the label. I think that's a really nice touch. And of course, they won't let you forget about that Sintrix FLT. Then, being a saltwater rod, you'll notice that this has a blue blank, like every good saltwater rod should. And that leads into alignment dots, which we really like, and the first guide, which is a Cerakoil guide, followed by a second stripping guide that is a recoil, not a Cerakoil guide. Very interesting. Then we've got snake guides going up the rest of the rod. But Hardy has also added some extra touches here under the stripping guides. They've pre-wrapped them so that the guide doesn't actually touch the blank. This is a really nice high-end feature that you don't see on many rods, regardless of where they're built. But now let's get to the meat and potatoes of this review, which is how this rod casts. This video is supported 100% by your purchases at Trident Fly Fishing. So if you're in the market for some new tackle, check us out at tridentflyfishing.com. Starting at our first saltwater distance of 40 feet, you'll notice right away that this is a fast rod. It's got tons and tons of power in that butt section, but it's got a soft enough tip that you're not really giving up any accuracy at the shorter distance. And we were casting an SA bonefish line, so it's definitely not an overly heavy line. It's got plenty of accuracy at that 40-foot distance, even if you're fishing bonefish. With that said, if I was fishing bonefish all day, every day, and I didn't have a 6-weight, there are probably 8-weights out there, like maybe the Scott Sector or the G. Loomis Asquith, that are better at those shorter shots. Then as we move back to 60 feet, the rod performs marvelously. It's just got great power and great tracking ability. I sort of view the 60-foot distance as the permit distance. It's going to be the shot as you're on the bow that you're going to have to make in order to catch that permit before he sees you. This rod will absolutely do that with ease. And I think that's one feature of the new Marksman Z that is going to be overlooked. Sure, it doesn't have the most feedback and feel, but what it does have is a lot of power, and that's going to let you make those longer shots into the wind when they really count. And of course, moving back to 80 feet, this is a fast rod, and it's a rod that loves to shoot a lot of line. So you're going to have no problem pushing this rod to the absolute limit of your casting ability. It's really accurate across all the distances, but maybe not the most accurate rod at any particular distance. This is a rod that's designed to make casting easy. It's a rod that you can put a wide range of lines on to really get the max performance out of it. One thing we haven't really touched on is swing weight, and this rod comes in at about 70 gram meters squared, which is an extremely lightweight 8-weight. And even more lightweight when you consider that this is a truly fast rod that's designed to put accurate casts into any wind and make sure you can get that fly in front of any fish. All in all, I think Hardy's done a fantastic job, and this is a solid upgrade over that Zane Pro, which, if I'm being honest, felt like a lot of the other saltwater Hardys that came before it. And now, it's time for our Poseidon Score. Up first is accuracy, and while this rod is highly accurate, I did feel like there were more accurate rods across the distances. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. In terms of components, this Hardy Marksman Z uses really top-notch componentry, and it's as good as anything out there. I'm going to give it a 9.5 out of 10. Next is distance and power, and this rod is an absolute monster. There are very few rods that are going to have the amount of reserve power that this Marksman Z has, and it earns a 10 out of 10. Then comes grip, and while this is a standard full wells grip with a fighting butt, I didn't like it quite as much as some of the older Hardys. There was just something about it that didn't fit my hand quite as well as some of the previous models have. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. In terms of looks and workmanship, while this is a fairly standard overseas built rod, they have really made an effort to change that opinion. Those under wraps under the stripping guides, for example, are a truly premium feature, and I think Hardy has upped the game in terms of their looks and workmanship. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. Up next is swing weight, and at roughly 70 gram meters squared, this rod is insanely light. And it's even lighter when you consider the fact that it's a true fast action rod. The balance point, however, was definitely further up the rod than you'd expect for a rod with such a low swing weight. And because of that, I'm only going to give it a 9.5 out of 10. It doesn't feel quite as light as that 70 gram meters really should feel when you're casting it. Then comes value, and at a retail price of $995, this is definitely a very expensive rod, but Hardy has still not crossed that $1,000 threshold. And I think that does say something, especially when you consider the extra workmanship that has gone into this rod and the top-notch componentry. I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10 for value. And last but not least is the cool factor, and while Hardy rods are not as cool per se as Sage rods are, this rod has had so much hype. Everyone in the Keys is talking about the Marksman Z, and I'll bet half the field of the next Gold Cup is going to be fishing the Hardy Marksman Z. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. And that leaves us with a total Poseidon score of 70.5, which ties the old ultralight as the best score a Hardy's ever gotten. This is a truly fantastic saltwater rod that competes with the very best. And if you're in the market for a new rod, this absolutely must be on your list. However, if you're looking for a rod that's a little bit softer and maybe a bit more forgiving, there are going to be some other rods worth considering as well. Of course, this new Hardy Marksman Z is available with free second-day air from TridentFlyFishing.com. Tell us what you think about it by leaving us a comment in the box below, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel because we've got a lot of great rod reviews coming right up. I'm Ben. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.